Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the dark side of professional sports, looking at some truly catastrophic, career-ending off-field decisions across both the NFL gridiron and the soccer pitch. We'll be breaking down 5 distinct, fatal mistakes made by athletes that completely erased their legacies. Okay, let's dive right into this. We so often focus on the incredible, just generational gifts these elite athletes possess, right? We marvel at their multi-million-dollar contracts, their worldwide fame, and the sheer physical prowess it takes to reach the absolute pinnacle of their sport. But what happens when the biggest opponent an athlete faces isn't on the field, but in the mirror? Today, we're looking at the tragic reality of athletes who threw away their entire legacies due to catastrophic off-field mistakes. These are the stories of careers that vanished in an instant, not because of a bad tackle or an unlucky injury, but because of their own destructive choices. Here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll be examining 5 specific case studies. 1. The nightlife and addiction spiral. 2. The failed drug test. 3. The unlicensed nightclub gun. 4. The shocking elevator assault. And finally, 5. The fatal 156 mph crash. Starting us off at number 1, the nightlife and addiction spiral, focusing on Andy Vandermeide. Man, Andy Vandermeide originally possessed just a terrifying amount of potential. At his peak, he looked like the absolute next great Dutch winger at Ajax. He was completely electric during their 2002 Champions League run, catching the eye of top European clubs with his pace and creativity, which earned him a massive move to Inter Milan. But then came the transfer to Everton in the English Premier League, a move that was meant to unlock his best version. Instead, he was swallowed by personal struggles. He battled severe isolation in a new country, and his life off the pitch began to cave in entirely. Now, what's really interesting and honestly tragic is how a top-tier career can just vanish without any major physical injury. It wasn't a lack of talent that ended his time at the top. It was his severe drinking, his marriage deteriorating, and a really dark spiral into depression. He became a constant worry for the club staff. There were missed trainings, late-night incidents, and repeated clashes with his manager, David Moyes, who naturally demanded a professionalism that Vandermeide just couldn't provide anymore. Ultimately, his proclivity for drugs and alcohol meant he played under 100 matches over the course of 10 years. The weight of his personal life literally became heavier than the football he once lived for. Moving on to number 2, the failed drug test, featuring Adrian Mutu. So with Mutu, we shift from a slow burn lifestyle decline to a massive, sudden rule violation right in the middle of a major career upswing. As a teenager, his numbers in Romania spoke for themselves. After making his way to Italy, he successfully refloated his career at Verona and Parma, becoming widely regarded as one of Europe's top strikers. This stellar rise earned him a highly coveted big money transfer to Chelsea. Everything was completely on the rise. But then, the devastating consequence. He tested positive for cocaine. That one single failed drug test abruptly halted the momentum of a player who literally had the world at his feet. Following his messy exit from Chelsea, Mutu was actually given second chances by massive clubs like Juventus and Fiorentina, but the magic was just gone. He ended up bouncing around all these uninspired lower league clubs, Cesena, Ajaccio, Petrolul, Pune City, and Targu Moras, before quietly retiring in 2016. I want you to consider the what-if factor here. What if he hadn't failed that test? Despite getting multiple second chances, he could never restore his former glory. The entire trajectory of his legacy was permanently altered by that single off-field choice. All right, number 3, the unlicensed nightclub gun and Plaxico Burress. We're shifting our focus now from the soccer pitch to the NFL and stepping into the realm of severe criminal negligence. Plaxico Burress was an absolute hero for the New York Giants. I mean, he caught the game-winning touchdown from Eli Manning in one of the greatest Super Bowl upsets in sports history. He was at the absolute peak of American sports fame, but his story shows us how terrifyingly fast a legacy can unravel. Less than a year later, a single night out in a Manhattan VIP section changed his life forever. Let's see how this builds, because the timeline here is just staggering. First, Burress enters the Latin Quarter nightclub in Manhattan carrying an unlicensed .40 caliber handgun tucked into his jeans. Second, as he moves through the VIP section, the gun slips down his leg. When he reaches for it, it fires, sending a bullet straight through his own right thigh. Now, because New York has incredibly tough gun laws, the third step was immediate. Mayor Michael Bloomberg publicly demanded he be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And fourth, Burris had no choice but to accept a plea deal for actual prison time. A split-second slip in a nightclub, and the whole shebang comes crashing down. Two years. That is the amount of time Plaxico Burress spent sitting in a prison cell. He was finally released in June of 2011, having effectively destroyed his absolute prime athletic years. And yeah, while he tried to make a comeback with the Jets and Steelers later on, he never returned to his old form. Millions of dollars and a legendary career derailed over one careless, incredibly negligent mistake. Which brings us to number 4, the shocking elevator assault involving Ray Rice. Our explainer has to turn now to a deeply distressing topic: domestic violence. Objectively speaking, before the horrific events of February 2014, Ray Rice was an absolute force in the NFL. A Super Bowl 47 champion with the Baltimore Ravens, a multi-time Pro Bowler, and a dynamic player who amassed over 2,000 yards from scrimmage in 2009. However, this peak is entirely and rightfully overshadowed by what happened at an Atlantic City hotel and casino. This was a catastrophic and abusive decision that permanently ended his career. The sequence of events here unfolded incredibly fast in the public eye. Step 1, the initial February incident occurred between Rice and his then-fiancée, resulting in simple assault charges. Step 2, the NFL, which was heavily criticized for its leniency, handed down a mere 2-game suspension. But then came Step 3. In September 2014, TMZ released the full, graphic interior elevator footage showing Rice striking her and knocking her unconscious. Step 4, within hours, the Ravens released him. Despite all his on-field talent, no NFL team would ever touch him again, resulting in his permanent exile from the league. In a press conference following the incident, Rice stated, "I want to apologize to my wife, who I've known since high school." And, while that quote highlights the very real human tragedy at the center of this event, the reality of professional sports, and frankly, public accountability, meant that absolutely no apology was going to reverse the severe, career-ending damage caused by his actions that night. Finally, we arrive at number 5, the fatal 156 mph crash, and the story of Henry Ruggs III. This is our final case study, and it is undoubtedly the most devastating, fatal mistake on our list. We are moving far beyond a ruined career into a catastrophic loss of human life. On the field, Henry Ruggs III was pure, unadulterated speed. Drafted 12th overall by the Las Vegas Raiders in 2020, the team actually picked him ahead of massive stars like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson for one specific reason: to use his explosive speed to blow the top off opposing NFL defenses. But tragically, the very speed that made him a first-round millionaire would become the exact instrument of his downfall. 156 miles per hour. Just take a second to process the sheer magnitude of that number. 156. That is the reckless, completely unfathomable speed Henry Ruggs was driving his vehicle on a public road before the collision occurred. The direct result of that speed was a catastrophic, fiery crash. And tragically, it claimed the life of a 23-year-old woman named Tina Tintor and her dog Max, who both died at the scene. It's a somber reality we have to face in this explainer. This goes infinitely beyond sports. It is a completely preventable tragedy that took innocent lives. So the crucial point here is just how quickly a life can be altered by terrible, terrible judgment. Think about it. Ruggs went from being a highly touted draft pick with the world in his hands to causing a fatal crash. He was immediately cut by the Raiders franchise. In 2023, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. A split-second, incredibly reckless decision to drive at 156 miles per hour erased innocent lives, a promising future, and a multi-million-dollar career all at once. When we look back at all 5 of these athletes, from the soccer pitch all the way to the NFL gridiron, we're left with that massive, lingering what-if motif. What if they had just made a different choice on a random Tuesday night? What if they had asked for help? The heavy psychological burden of throwing away a generational gift, of knowing that your own actions caused your downfall, must just be an immense regret to carry. We've explored the devastating reality of self-inflicted downfall today, and it leaves us with a really profound thought to ponder. I want you to ask yourself, which is a greater tragedy, losing your physical abilities to a completely unavoidable injury, or throwing away your world-class talent through your own destructive choices? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the psychology behind the success and the failure we see every single day.